The Midwest has been dealing with devastating floods that have not been getting much press attention, but they're not only devastating individuals who live in the area, the agriculture industry is suffering, small farmers are suffering as a result of this. The devastating floods across the Midwest are expected to cost the country at least $3 billion in damages to both homes and farms. And also several portions of the country received accumulated precipitation exceeding 200% of the average to date. So this has been horrible for people living in the area, and it's kind of a double whammy for farmers in the area as well, because of the fact that they were already hit negatively by the trade war, the ongoing trade war that was started with Donald Trump, and now they're dealing with the financial chaos and wreckage of this flooding as well.
All right, so I have lots of comments on this. First, let's talk about the devastation. Holt County, Nebraska, 70% of it is flooded. 70% of the entire county. This weather pattern was called a bomb cyclone. So over $3 billion in damage. So when they talk about Green New Deal and how much it costs, that's a conversation we had on the show yesterday. They have these made up numbers by right-wing think tanks that have been debunked by every fact check organization. But what they never talk about is how much climate change costs us today. So is this related to climate change? Yes. Now, we give the caveats because it is true and we care about facts that you can't attribute any one single weather pattern to climate change, but you can attribute overall patterns on a macro scale. So we have had the worst fires we've ever had. We've had the worst hurricanes we've ever had. Houston had the biggest rainfall that has ever been recorded. And now a bomb cyclone in the middle of the country that creates massive, unprecedented flooding. And by the way, there's different layers of this. There was snow before there was rain, then there's freezing again. In one of those layers of the storm, it was actually raining ice, but it wasn't just small pieces of ice. Some of the ice that was landing were the size of small cars.
What?
Yes, it is unreal. That's why they're calling it a bomb cyclone, because it's like bombs dropping out of the sky. Climate change is real, and it's not, the Trump administration says, oh, it might happen 50 or 75 years from now. No, it's happening right now. That is why we are getting one record weather event after another after another. Now the Midwest is wiped out. So we have got to do something right now, right now. We have to have the fierce urgency of now. It's not just that, hey, things get dramatically worse in 12 years. It's not just that things get dramatically worse once the ice caps melt and the methane trapped in the ice is released into the air, which is actually worse than carbon, and we cannot put it back into the ice. Those are all devastating, but we're already being devastated. So unfortunately, those states voted Republican. And so they voted for politicians who are actively making sure right now that the oil companies get subsidies from American taxpayers, but we don't do anything to get to clean, renewable energy and fight climate change. So when you are devastated in these storms, yes, there is someone to blame. It's not just an act of God. It is also an act of the Republican Party. And if you don't want your livestock wiped out, I mean, I can go into unbelievable details here of each state. Nebraska lost $1.4 billion, and $500 million alone was in livestock losses.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind, the agriculture industry is huge in Nebraska, and it accounts for 20% of the state's gross domestic product. And so this is really gonna hurt the state of Alaska, both economically and also, just personally from the damage caused to property. And you're right, Cenk. I mean, we are seeing the impacts today. And the very people who have bought into this narrative that climate change is some sort of hoax are the people who are suffering the most. But we always talk about, oh, the Green New Deal. How much is the Green New Deal gonna cost? The Green New Deal is so expensive. I mean, first of all, the estimates are nonsense. And we don't even have like a detailed policy to analyze cost-wise yet, and it totally discounts how much money we would save by cheap renewable energy, but that's beside the point. Think about how much money we're spending on the impact of climate change right now.
So in Nebraska, in the ice storm that happened, afterwards, it was an apocalyptic scene where there was those giant ice chunks and dead cows and calves floating all over the counties. So we're not headed towards an apocalypse, we're living in it. We literally wiped out Paradise, California. The fire destroyed the whole town. So fires everywhere, floods everywhere, and the hurricanes, again, more extreme than we've ever seen. We had 14 separate billion-dollar storms or weather events last year, and that totaled $91 billion in damage. Are the oil companies gonna pay that $91 billion? No. They're gonna privatize the gains and socialize the costs. We all have to pay that $91 billion because we care about our friends and our families and our neighbors. And in the blue states, we love you in Nebraska, and we don't want your livestock wiped out. We don't want you flooded out. We're gonna come in your time of need, okay? And we're gonna help you, and we're gonna find that $91 billion. But the oil companies that's caused it in the first place, they already took home the profits. They're not gonna come and help you in your time of need. They're gonna laugh and they're gonna buy off more of your Republican politicians. And yes, some Democrats as well. Yes, they buy off more Republicans, and that's a fact, but they buy off way too many Democrats on top. Do you know how many of the American people are at risk for flooding this year? 200 million out of 330. You know, the worst of the flooding hasn't come yet. It comes historically in mid-May. If this ain't the worst of the flooding, my God, brace for impact. And every Republican governor in those states right now affected by the flooding that is now asking for federal help, all of them say, what climate change? I don't see climate change. I don't want our party or the country or our states to do anything about climate change. But when my communities are devastated, then I want money. And Mike Pence went to visit and said, these events are extraordinary. Gee, I wonder why they're extraordinary, Mike. It's exactly the climate change we warned you about. We must have the fierce urgency of now. We must act. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.